All right, my name's Sam Wiki, and tonight we are going to tie a saltwater pattern developed by Harry Spear called the Tasty Toad. So this fly is sort of what evolved into later on the Tarpon Toad. I thought it had some interesting history, so tied a bunch of them. Spent a little time trying to gather the story as close as I could find out, but this has a Merkin style head. Harry Spear developed it based off of Del Brown's Merkin crab, but he wanted a pattern that could represent a toadfish. So he was realizing the big bonefish in the Keys were eating little baby toadfish, and so he wanted to develop a fly that mimicked toadfish. So toadfish has a big wide head, has a slim kind of tadpole style tail, so this Marabout will get nice and thin in the water. The front of this Merkin head will stay wide, and that will help imitate that toadfish. Toadfish is very mottled and variegated and on the top, and then white on the bottom. Looks a lot kind of like a freshwater sculpin, I would say. And so Harry developed this fly as a bonefish fly. And later on, Gary Merriman, who's credited with developing the Tarpon Toad, and then Tim Hoover and Andy Mill developed the Tarpon Toad further with the Marabout on the back, but Harry Spear was tying one with a Marabout tail long before that. So I thought that was really cool history. I wanted to tie it, and I thought we would share that with all of you guys I think it's a cool pattern actually too. So tonight we're gonna tie the Tasty Toad by Harry Spear. All right, we're gonna tie the Tasty Toad. So we started with a 305 NU saltwater hook. This is the heavyweight hook, and we got a squatchy dumbbell 3mm on the front, and that hook is heavy enough to keel the fly and keep it straight. We want this is a toadfish pattern, so it's important that we keep the dark stuff on the top and the white body on the bottom. So we have to make sure it rides right. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to add in some tan, very light tan Marabout out the back. And we want this to be about 1.5 times the length of the shank of the hook, just for reference. So we'll tie that out the back. Stems out of there. And then because this was originally intended to imitate a toadfish, we are going to put some MFC barred Marabout across the top. If you look up a toadfish online, they look like a freshwater sculpin, a saltwater sculpin, or a micro lingcod, or the back of them has this kind of a tadpole body. So this Marabout, obviously, when it gets wet, when you pull it, will be very thin, and then we need the front of the head to be pretty wide because it's called a toadfish because it literally looks like has a big frog head. All right, so we got the barred Marabout on top. We've got the tan Marabout on the bottom. What we're going to tie in now is I've picked a set of dry fly tips, a matching pair of those. So that just came off of a normal grizzly dry fly neck. And we want these splayed out, so there's a little natural splay to the feather. We want that going out both directions in the back. And we want these tips to pretty much match up with the where the marabou tips end, and just adds additional variegated look to the fly. And what you should end up with there is just kind of your traditional splayed hackles. Okay, and then the last little thing on the tail we're gonna do is we have some of this lateral scale. I think this is the really thin kind, 1/32. We only need one piece. That's plenty of flash. We're representing a toadfish. They're not a flashy bait. So we'll have that out the back. And it's fine to tie it in if you get into a situation and you're looking at it in the water and it just looks too flashy to represent what you're trying to represent, then it's super easy to cut it out. But it's better to have it in. Maybe you're going to end up fishing some dirty water, or you're using this fly to represent something that, other than a toadfish, you still have the flash in there. So we'll cut that lateral scale to be kind of the same length as all the other rest of the tail. Then we're going to kind of pull the whole tail together like this in a batch, and we're going to put tight wraps right behind the back of the marabou. Tight, and then onto the wrap around the shank of the hook. We do that 5 times. And we just want to do everything we can to keep this marabou kind of up and away from any possibility of the marabou fouling when we're fishing it. All right, so perfect. So then we got that. All right, so now it's popped up a little bit. Should help keep that marabou up a little bit. Then we're just going to wrap the shank of the hook with our thread. Any of these little loose ends pieces, just get them covered. We're going to mostly cover this section, so this doesn't have to be perfect or fully covered, but just so you have a somewhat uniform body to create the Merkin style head with. All right, so I'm going to go to the back, and then I'm going to use this EC fiber. This is a Fly Project product called EC Hair. Stands for Everglades City Hair, because we started using it first time on a trip down to Everglades City. But this is the sand color. It has just a slight, might be hard to pick up in the video, but it has a little slight different color variations. And it looks really good on these types of heads. So what we're going to do is just tie it crisscross the fibers on to the body. We're going to do 4 sections of this. We want that first section all the way to the back. So we don't got to tie these in a ton because we are going to epoxy them in, but just for cutting them and everything else, you want them pretty stationary. And it helps a little bit at the end of each section if you just wrap it onto the hook, kind of like you do when you're placing your dumbbells. All right, then what I'm going to do is I have a clip here. Not an ideal clip. I can't find the right one. But if we just clip this a little bit onto the shank of the hook and hold all the fibers back, then we can cleanly tie the next 3 sections up here. So I'm sure maybe you have a better clip system, but I don't right now. So this will work. All right, so we'll just tie the next section in. And I'll pull all that back. We'll tie that onto the hook. Keep it in place. Okay, once you get that last section in, if you want, you can definitely tie a weed guard in. There's plenty of space to put one on here. You can set the eyes slightly back if you want one in front of the barbells. Didn't tie one in on this one. And we can finish it off right there. All right. Now what we got here is we have 4 pretty even sections. I'll show you guys that here. So we got 4 nice even sections here that we can cut down our head with. So what I like to do is just pull these tight without, pulling the fibers out. And we want to cut it at basically an angle that's like this. So we're going to cut it a little bit in and then go out like this so that we have a nice swim head. So we'll just pull those tight and we'll just make a cut. And we'll try to just match them up. All right, we got pretty close there. We can trim off any little errant fibers. But you can see by using that clip, we get a nice, really clean bottom of the head and nice segmentation. And that also adds a variegated look to this fly. All right, then the last step that we're going to do is we're going to just add this raid zap right down the main hook shank here. And this does a couple things. This adds more variegation to this fly, and it just locks in all these fibers and the dumbbells on the front. So your thread wraps, your marabou in the back, which if you ever bought commercial tarpon toads, they often have a problem with the marabou coming loose in the back. And then we will just light that up for a second. What that'll also do is it'll create some hard spots. So when we marker the top of this, the dark spots get darker than the rest, and it adds, additional modeling here. So okay, and then we got a Mocha chartback marker, but you can totally use a Sharpie, whatever. In a bunch of their original patterns, I guess they were coloring these green, which would make sense also. It seems like the toadfish have quite a variety of hues in them. So I just mark it right down the center, and then I just take the tips and get it again to add some additional coloring. If you, like we said earlier, if you look at the toadfish, they have a very dark top, and it's all modeled in, so you really can't make it look wrong on this section. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Color it however you want, of course. All right, so that is All right, so yeah, that is the finished tasty toad fly. Originally designed and tied by Harry Spears. You know, he was riffing off of the Del Brown's Merkin crab, and I just think it's super interesting that like, you know, we we would look at this and say, yeah, it's a tarpon toad, but Harry Spears designed this long before the tarpon toad, and the tarpon toad was just an evolution of this original tasty toad pattern, which was um, designed, you know, to mimic a toadfish, which evidently Florida Keys bonefish like to eat, especially the big ones. So I think that's an interesting story and it's a cool fly. So hope you enjoyed watching, and we will have another video out soon. Thanks again.